Thanks everyone for joining. We'll get started here just in a few moments, letting other people trickle in. All right. Hi everyone. Welcome to office hours for the Snap AR Lensathon. I hope you guys are all having fun building your lenses and imagining a whole new world where you get to overlay computing over the world. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the feature that we launched recently called remote APIs. And if you want to integrate it into the lenses that you're going to build during the Lensathon, this will hopefully give you an overview of what the feature is. And then we'll actually go and build a few things just so you get some hands-on experience with what it looks like to use the remote API feature. And the remote API feature basically solves the problem of how historically the only way to get data into your lenses was through either data that Snapchat provided to you. So if you've built lenses before, maybe you've noticed that we give you information like the current weather or the user's birthday if they give it to you. So there's these kinds of information that we give to the lens that you can use in your lenses, or you can use data that the user inputs, for example, the keyboard or the camera, which is also a form of input, or the microphone, and then perform processing on some of those in case of the camera or the microphone, or just directly take the input in the case of the keyboard and actually use that to power your lens. However, now what we allow you to do is actually use a collection of remote APIs. So we've partnered with external data sources and we've actually brought their APIs into the asset library inside of Lens Studio and configured it such that you can use these data sources directly inside of Lens Studio. And this lets people build a wide variety of really engaging lenses that you just couldn't build before. And the idea is that you can build lenses that are a little bit more alive and something that users can come back to with the hope that the data inside them is changing over time in response to the world or the things going on around them. So this is just a few examples of remote API lenses that have been created. The one on the left uses our Sports Radar Partners API to show you during March Madness, the Final Four score in real time in the middle of the lens. In the middle, we have our partner, the Astrology API, and you can use this to give people astrology information based on their star sign. And then lastly, you can use the weather and air quality APIs. Here's an example where there's a small bird landing on your hand using hand tracking, and then it actually displays the air quality for the local area that you're in. And I think this lens even goes as far to integrate voice, and you can see different cities around the world and the current weather, and will change the visuals in response to that. So a large variety of lenses can be built using these APIs. And to date, we've onboarded quite a handful of APIs. All of these you can use today. So I'll just walk you through what's available today. And then as we get further down into our course today, I'll help you actually see how we can use some of these to build something. So the Alpaca API helps you get information on stock prices in real time. So this is stocks on the actual stock market, the NASDAQ, Dow, etc. And then there's the AccuWeather API. This helps you get weather data directly into your lens in real time. The iTranslate API, this helps you actually translate text from most of every language into any other language. And then we have a large variety of sports radar APIs from cricket to tennis. And these let you get real-time information on sports events around the world. We also have the Astrology API, which lets you get astrology data, like I just mentioned. And lastly, the Plume Labs Air Quality API, which you can use in tandem with the AccuWeather API to show air quality index information alongside the weather. And we're always onboarding new APIs. If you're interested, you can go and look at our documentation for APIs, and we have a form there where you can submit requests for new APIs. We're super interested to hear what APIs you might want to integrate so that we can onboard those as well. Feel free to drop them in the chat. We'd love to know exactly what APIs you're looking to use in your lenses. Also, if you you feel at the end of this course, you still need a little bit more information on how to use all these APIs. We have a bunch of templates inside of Lens Studio to walk you through many of these APIs. So for the weather API, we have a simple template which shows you how to actually display the weather inside of a lens. For the stock market API, the alpaca API I just mentioned, we actually show you how to build a candlestick chart of the stock price over the last window period of time. We also have the cryptocurrency API, which lets you get in real-time data on different cryptocurrencies. And we built a small face lens, which reflects the current price and whether the cryptocurrency is up or down over the last 24 hours. And then lastly, we have some simple examples of how to use the Translate API with text and 3D text inside of your lens. So feel free to go check out those templates. They're great learning resources, and you can use them to pull apart and maybe remix and build your own lenses as well. So I'm just going to walk you through quickly at a high level what exactly is needed to build an API lens using the remote API system, and then we'll dive right into Lens Studio and actually build some stuff so you get a much better idea. So the first thing you're going to do is import the API from the asset library. This will import a remote service module, which is a new asset type for the remote API system. And then it also automatically creates an API wrapper for you. And if you're not familiar with API wrappers or APIs at all, that's totally fine. We've tried to make it as simple as possible for you to use these APIs, even if you're not coming from a traditional background where you might be, calling web APIs. And then lastly, you simply take this API wrapper, which exposes all the different methods that the API has. So for example, the weather API lets you get the current forecast or the current forecast for the next 10 days. These are different endpoints inside of the API. And so you just simply go into this API wrapper and call the endpoint that you wish to use with the parameters that you are specifying. And then we provide a callback, or you provide a callback, and that gives the data of the response back to you. And you can use that however you wish. If that didn't make sense, that's totally fine. We're going to jump in now to Lens Studio and walk through how this all actually works. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to try to attempt in rapid time to speed build a couple of things for you. I haven't practiced this. I'm just going to build them in real time in the spirit of a Lensathon or a hackathon and see how far we can get. So with that, let's jump into Lens Studio and see what we can do. Let me just switch over to Lens Studio. Awesome. So let's go ahead and open up the asset library and import an API, like I just mentioned. So all my friends have been talking about cryptocurrency lately. It seems like a popular topic of conversation. So maybe I'll import the FTX API, which lets me get access to a bunch of different cryptocurrency data. The first thing you'll notice is this API access changed. And what this is talking about is there are certain APIs that we restrict for privacy reasons when you're using an API inside of your lens. And if you want to learn more about that, you can click Learn More, and it'll walk you through which pieces of lens functionality get disabled when you're actively using an API lens. So I'm going to go ahead and follow this prompt and save and reopen. Awesome. So now you can see I automatically got an FTX API with the remote service module that I just had described to you would be imported. So let's open up this script and take a look at what it gives us. We can see that there are a bunch of endpoints exposed in this script, each pertaining to a different endpoint in the API. And if you wanted to learn more about these, you could go to the asset library and then follow this link to the documentation for more information on the FTX API. I've used the FTX API before, so I'm familiar. Ooh, I didn't mean to click on that. I've followed the FTX API before, and so I'm a little bit familiar with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. And I can see that there's this get single market call. And this basically takes two coin symbols and provides a callback and gives me the price and other information on that cryptocurrency. So I'm going to try and use that to create a lens. And maybe what we can do is display the price of the cryptocurrency on my head using 3D text. And then maybe we can do something fun, like have some coins or something that shoot out of the user's mouth. I don't know, let's try that and see how that goes. Lens Studio makes everything simple, so we can accomplish a lot in a small amount of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a controller. And what that controller is gonna do is it's actually gonna be responsible for calling my API. So as an input to this controller, what I'll do is I'll add my API wrapper script, because that exposes a bunch of endpoints that we can use to actually build our lens. So I go ahead and add this input, then I go over to my controller, add the script, and then add the FTX API here. And then I mentioned I want to add some text to the top of my head here. So let's go ahead and add a text 3D component as input and add some text. Then we're going to need some text in the scene, and we're going to want that text to be bound to my head. So for that, let's add a head mesh. We don't quite need the head mesh yet, but if we're going to do some stuff with coins later, maybe we may. So I'll go ahead and close this head mesh because we don't need it yet. But this head binding is really convenient. What it'll do is it'll track my head in space. So anything that's a child of this will automatically end up being tracked to my head. So I'm going to go ahead and add some text. I'll make it a child of that head binding. Let me just put it into position. Let's re-enable that head mesh just so I can see where I'm manipulating things. Then let's maybe make this a little bigger. Okay. I'll just leave a stand-in that says price for now, and then we can edit it later. So let's go ahead and reopen our controller script and take a look at what's happening. So we have this text input, so let's go ahead and set that text input. And so now we're getting the controller and the text. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the FTX APIs, get single market call, pass in these symbols, and then when the data responds to us via this callback, and if you're not familiar with callbacks, it's basically when you pass a function as an argument to another function, and then that function is responsible for calling the one that you provided once some data has returned. So since these API calls hit the network, they take some time to come back. And so they're still pretty fast, but they do take some time. And so you have to provide a callback that will be called whenever your response comes back. So if you're familiar with web APIs or using APIs in general, this is very familiar to you. But if you're not, this might be a little bit intimidating at first, but I promise it's really easy and you'll be up and running in no time. So let's go ahead and write an init function that actually calls our API. So remember, it took in two arguments. The two parameters were the symbols that we wanted. And then the function, the callback takes in whether or not there was an error, and then actually passes the response to you, which I'll just call R here. And an important thing about the response is the response from the API is JSON, but our API wrapper automatically turns that JSON into a JavaScript object. It deserializes it for you, and then we can use that. But then to print it, what I'm actually going to do is turn it back into a string just to show you the data that's coming back. So we can see down here, there's some data coming back, and there's some data coming back, and I'm getting a request in chat to zoom in on the script. Unfortunately, I can't. I'm really sorry, but I can try and make it a little bigger. Sorry, folks in the chat. So what we're going to see here is there's some data that came back. So let me just copy paste it so it's a little bigger for you to read. Oops. So we can see there's a lot of data that's coming back, and it seems like there's in there a price, and what else do we have? Seems like we have price and 1 hour change and 24-hour change. So let's try and use those to build our lens. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take this price out. So if we can do that, we saw the result object var.result.price, and let's store that. And then let's go ahead and say the input text that we had should take and look at that. We built a lens that is in real time fetching data about the price of the cryptocurrency. You can see that over on the left here. And if I were to refresh this lens, you would see that the price might change because it's actually live and updated. So it's that simple to get some data into your lens. And if you want to take this even further, let's use some of the other information that's coming from the FTX API. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and we wanted to add some coins that shoot out of the user's mouth. So how are we going to do that? Well, first we're going to need a coin. So let's head over to the asset library and hopefully there's some money or coins that I can use. Oh, cool. So there's a money pack. And the asset library is a great resource if you ever need various assets or tools or helpers. There's a ton of stuff in there. Definitely check it out. And so there's this coin here. Let me just drag this out. Let's head over to our scene and take a look at it. So we have a coin here. Let's rename it to coin. And we're going to do something fun. Let's put it inside of me. So let's go and make it a child of the head. So it tracks my head. And so now you can see I have a coin inside my mouth, which is fun. And we don't want me to look like a scary gray person the whole time. So let's add an occluder. And this will basically just be used so that instead of drawing a mesh, we can occlude whatever the mesh is in place of. And let's just add this. Oh, where'd my mouse go? Just add that to the head mesh. Here. So now when I open and close my mouth, there's a coin inside of it, which is fun. And let's have that coin shoot out. So how are we going to do that? Well, basically, we're going to want to spawn a coin at some frequency from this location and then just apply physics to it so it flies out of the mouth. And then let's color it based on the 24-hour change. So that adds some more dynamicness to the lens, where if the cost of Bitcoin has gone up, the value of Bitcoin has gone up, we'll make the coin red or make the coin yellow or green. And if it's gone down, let's make the coin a different color. So let's add a bunch of inputs that we can use to go ahead and do this. So the first thing I'm going to want to add is a prefab, which we're going to actually spawn. Let's call that our prefab. And then we're going to want to add a scene object that resembles our spawn location. And then we're going to want to add a spawn count, which is like how many coins do we actually want to spawn. Then let's add a spawn delay. So I'm just thinking here. Let's add a spawn delay so that we can actually delay the creation of each coin. And then let's go ahead and add an input material that we're going to use color based on the price of Bitcoin. And so we'll call that material to color. This is a speedathon, so please forgive me if code quality is not the best. Let's go ahead and define these. Okay. So now we've added all these inputs. Let's go and wire them up. So the first thing we're going to need is this prefab of the coin. So I want the coin to be a little bit smaller so it's not occluding all my teeth, but instead feels like it fits in my mouth. So that's a little bit better. And then let's go ahead and turn this into a prefab. And let's take it out of the head for now because we don't need it there. And then let's go ahead and actually, let's just use this as a quick way to get our spawn location. So now we have our spawn location. We have our prefab. Let's say we want to make 100 of them. And then let's say we want to delay the spawn, let's say like 1 every 0.1 seconds. The material we want to color is going to be inside that money pack that we just imported. So there it is. Oops. Let's go ahead and add that there. And then when the value of the cryptocurrency is up, let's go green. And when the value of the cryptocurrency is down, let's go red. And I don't actually know if it's up or down right now, so this will be a fun way to find out. The last thing we're going to want to do is we want to add physics to this object. So let's go ahead and add a physics body. And you can see immediately the coin just fell. If you didn't see that, I'll replay it here for you. So the coin's falling now with some gravity, which is awesome. Since we want to shoot this object out of my mouth, maybe what we can actually go and do is tone down physics. And physics and particle systems are a great way to add dynamism to your lens in addition with APIs. So let's go ahead and change these physics settings a bit just so I can have something that falls a little bit differently. So now you can see it's falling a little faster with less gravity. And let's go ahead and go back to our controller script and go ahead and write some code that's actually going to spawn these coins. So what we're going to do is create a delayed callback, which basically will be called every so often in order to spawn these coins at some frequency that we defined, right? We defined that spawn delay. And then let's also define a quick variable called should spawn coins that we can use to turn this effect on or off based on whether or not my mouth is open. Because we don't want it to always be spawning. We only want it to be spawning when my mouth is open. Okay, so now let's grab the position. So now I'm basically just getting the position of our spawn location in world space. And then let's get the rotation too. And then basically what we're going to do is that coin prefab that we just created, using that coin prefab, what we're going to do is spawn it at this location. So now let's actually spawn our object. So we'll say script.prefab.instantiate, and we'll pass in null because we just want it to be parented to the root. And then we'll say obj.getTransform. Cool, so that should spawn a coin at that location. And then what we're going to do is actually grab that physics body that we created. And then what we're going to do is let's add a force to it. And we're going to want this force to be relative. And let's just make up some numbers here. We want it to be, I think the coin is pointed. I think that should work. Let's add some relative upwards force. And then let's say impulse, oops. So now we've added a force to the body. And then if we still have some to make, we still have some coins to spawn, then the way that we actually enable this is we call the delayed events reset, which actually resets the time that's on it. So then it'll get called again. And then the first one we want to get called right away. So this doesn't do anything yet. We actually have to hook it up to something. So let's create an event that fires on mouth open. So this is another part of what makes Lens Studio so great for developing AR. It has all these built-in events for things like mouth open and mouth closed. So now we have a mouth open event and a mouth closed event, and then on mouth open, what we want to do is bind a function. that basically sets should spawn coins to true and then spawns the coins. Then what we'll do on the other end is we'll say mouth closed, and we'll just bind a function that sets should spawn coins to false, which ends this chain. And you could also theoretically save this delayed event and then cancel it, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So if I go ahead and close that, oh, what just happened? Can't add relative force of null. So let's look at our prefab and see if there's a physics body on it. So you can see the problem is just this physics body didn't actually get saved on our prefab. So let's just go ahead and make sure this physics body is here, hit apply, and then bring this back out. And so now this has a physics body on it. All right, look at that. I have coins flying out of my mouth. And that's a fun effect. And let's add some colors to that based on the price of the cryptocurrency. So what I'm going to do now is go back up to here where we were actually fetching this data. And let's actually grab whether or not the price is up or down. So let's say is up. And then we'll say script, or we want to look at the r.result. And if I recall correctly, I think it was change 1 hour. Let's look at the change over the last hour. And we'll say is greater than 0 because it'll be negative if the price has been down for the last hour. And then what we'll do is we'll say script.material to color dot main pass dot base color is equal to color script.color up. Sorry, that's not what we want to do. We want to say is if it is up, then we'll say script.color up. Otherwise, we'll do script.color down. So now, oh no, seems like Bitcoin is down, which that's not that great. I wish it was up. But maybe now what we can do just to show you that this is working is I'll go ahead and print the r.result.change over the last hour. And then I don't know if you can see it, but right there it's negative. So it's not down by too much over the last hour, just few basis points. But we can just to show you it's working, and the coloring is working. I'll change this to color up. And we can live in an imaginary world where the price is up. Cool. So that's how you can build a lens which incorporates external data really easily from third-party APIs using the remote API system. And I'm going to pause my screen here and hop over to answer some questions. Let's go look at this Q&A. So the first question we have is, are the remote APIs, do they only include APIs that have been approved by Snap? So yes, that is how it works right now. Basically, we only include APIs that we have approved and partnered with, but we are in the process of answering of adding a lot more APIs over the next coming year and over the next coming months. And so if you are interested, we'll share a link out after the talk where you can actually submit your own APIs that you may want to use, and we'll try and get those in as soon as we can. We're definitely really interested about what people are going to build with all the different APIs. And then the next question is it possible to make these requests in an interval so to do the changes live in Lens without restarting? I don't quite know if I follow this question. I think you might be asking if the request could be made repeatedly. I think, okay, I get it. So basically, yeah, so you 100% can. You can make those requests in an interval, so you could poll the API repeatedly and see the data and have it appear almost as if it were coming in real time. That's actually how one of our templates works. So we have this FTX template, which you can look at, which gets cryptocurrency data, just like I showed you, and it actually runs the API call at some frequency in order to poll it and present the illusion that it actually is updating the data almost in real time. It's really cool, and you can do a lot of fun effects. You can like do a stock ticker fade in and fade out. in order to display the price. And this works with every API, right? You can call any API repeatedly at some frequency in order to see if the data is changing and present a more real-time experience to the user. How can we use, the next question is from someone, how can we use texture projection with segmentation to make a more accurate occluder? I see. So I think you're saying, could you use some sort of face segmentation to occlude? I'm not 100% exactly sure how you could go about doing that. That does sound like a really interesting approach, though. And so please reach out to us and let us know what you have in mind, and we will do our best to understand if it's possible, or maybe you're introducing us to a new technique that we didn't know was possible. Next question was about the iTranslate API. I tried to mix the iTranslate API with the fingerspelling template, but I always got an error. Sorry to hear that, Mohammed. If you reach out to us, we will try and figure out what's going on for you. You definitely should be able to use the iTranslate API and the fingerspelling template. If you, I'm imagining you want to do something like take the text and then pass it into the iTranslate API. That 100% should be possible. That's also a really, really cool use case. And please reach out to us via support, and we'll try and figure out what's going on. The next question is from Lafia. For the weather API, will there be a way to dynamically get the location based on where the user is? When I tried, it seemed like you had to choose a city in the script. This is definitely something we're very interested in, and please stay tuned for more. Do all the other APIs work using the same principle like the astrology API? So all the APIs definitely do work similar to the astrology API. Basically, all of the APIs are set up, and let me actually just import one. I'll share my screen again and just walk you through this. But all the APIs are set up such that all you have to do, I like how when I'm talking now, I'm reminded of the fate of Bitcoin. So when you open up the asset library, all of these APIs basically work the same way. So the way it works is when you actually go ahead and import these. So for example, when I import the AccuWeather API, you'll see there's also automatically a code-generated wrapper that has different endpoints that we can call with parameterized data for things like the forecast. So all of them work functionally the same way. And there's a lot of uniformity between how these API calls are structured. For example, we always parse the JSON on your behalf and return it to you. We have standard error handling. So all of this works out of the box. And if you, for some reason, needed to change it, you totally could. And you can read the API documentation for remote API request and remote API response and construct your own wrapper here as well. But hopefully that answers your question. Okay, moving on. The next question is, I didn't get the part where we can see the values and the variable names to call them back. Can you show that again? Yeah, sure. So I think you're asking about the inputs to the API. So let me go ahead and share Lens Studio again. So we're back in my favorite place, Lens Studio. And let's go ahead and look at this FTX API and talk about the different variable names and then the callbacks and how that works. Because I think this is one of the trickier things. If you haven't worked with web APIs or asynchronous programming or callback-based programming, it can be a little bit confusing. So let me walk through this really deliberately, and hopefully it makes sense. So basically, this is a function, getSingleMarket, which takes in two parameters, the first symbol and the second symbol. The way I know this, aside from reading the script here, is you can go to the asset library, open up the FTX API, and view the documentation. And the documentation also shows you what the response will look like. So basically, this is the callback you're going to pass in. So when I go to my controller script, which takes as input the FTX API, I know that there's this getSingleMarket call. And I know it's going to take two parameters, one which is Bitcoin, or one which is a symbol, and the other which is a symbol. So I've just chosen BTC and USD, but if I wanted to, for example, I could also do ETH, and now that's the price of ETH. And let's find out if ETH is up or down. It's down. Oh no. So ETH, so this is parameterizable, so we can change these. And then the callback that you pass in. So this is what I was talking about. Callback is just a function that you provide to another function. So here we've given our get single market function, this function that we've defined in line, which takes in the error. So is there an error or not? And then a response. So for full correctness sake, I could, for example, here check to see if there was no error and then run my code. Because if there was an error, then I'd want to handle that and maybe display it to the user. But since we were just speed building, I left that part out. So this takes the error and then the response. And the response is a JavaScript object that is the deserialized representation from the JSON that comes back. So since the API just sends you JSON, JavaScript object notation, we actually turn that into a real JavaScript object for you inside the FTX API. You can see that here. We just called json.parse, and you get this parsed body back. Since it's basically what's coming back from the API is just a string, we take this result and then you can access its internals, and you can easily print it like this just to get a sense of what the shape of the data looks like, or you can actually go and look online at the documentation like I just showed you via the asset library, and that is an easy way to check as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Let me go ahead and jump to the next one. The next question is, can we use two APIs at the same time? 100%. This is a super exciting place to explore different combinations between the APIs. Of course, we always want to add more APIs as well, but with what we have right now, there's already a lot of interesting things. We've seen people combine the air quality index API with the weather API. You can combine the astrology API with the weather API. You can combine different sports APIs, which is also interesting. So you can definitely use as many APIs as you want at the same time. And the only thing that I would suggest is to make it really clear to the user when things are loading versus not loading. As you can see in my example here, in the example that I constructed earlier, we basically don't do anything to handle the fact that there might be a lag between when you actually call the API and when the API results callback gets called with the data. And in that time in between, you might want to actually show some sort of loading indicator or something just to let the user know that data is on the way, which is really common way to handle those sorts of things. Where to find the symbols? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question, but if you want to just ask it with a little bit more detail, hopefully I can get to that as well. The next question was from Kyle, can you share any new APIs that will be coming in the near future? So I can't say exactly which APIs are coming in the near future, but we have definitely more coming, and we're super excited about them. But again, if you're curious about getting a specific API onboarded, definitely reach out to us. And also there's a form on the remote API documentation page, which will let you actually fill out what APIs you're hoping to use, and we'll definitely prioritize based on that as well. Okay, I just got some clarification on the symbols question. So I guess you were asking about which symbols are available to use with the cryptocurrency API, or for example, like the Alpaca API. All of that information is available in the respective documentation for each API. So the way that I would go about doing that is if you go to the asset library and then actually just view the documentation. Let me quickly show you. So if you go to the asset library and then you go, for example, to the Alpaca API and you click view documentation, this will present somewhere in here is a list of all the different endpoints you could hit. And there are also endpoints, for example, which will return all of the things available to you. So let me show that to you as well really quickly. So there is in the FTX API an API called get markets. And if I was to just show you what that looked like really quick. So this actually returns a full list of all the markets. Sorry if the text is a bit small, But you can see that this function called get markets actually returns all the valid markets that you could possibly use. So the list isn't static. The folks over at FTX are always adding new cryptocurrencies as they get created or onboarded onto their platform. And so this is an easy way to get the list of all of them. And you could totally build a lens that, for example, has a carousel of all the different cryptocurrencies and lets you easily view the current price or other metadata about them in real time. Cool. Let's see what other questions we have. The next question is, how can I delete the work if I want to change it? And can I participate more than once? I'm not quite sure I fully understand that one as well, but if you want to drop some clarification in the chat, we can definitely try and get that one answered. Cool, that's all the questions that we had. I'll pause here and see if any more come in, but otherwise, I wish you all the best with whatever you're building in your Lensathon. Okay, awesome. It doesn't seem like we have any more questions, so I'm gonna hop off, but it's been great building lenses with you today.